They will reject people because this profile isn't what they want to see. And I go, well, hold on, right? There's four elements of their personality. How are you judging each one of those four? Because we have seen successful ISAs that have strengths in some of these, right? We're back and another one of our Tuesday topic sessions, showing off, my new webcam, loving it, right? Looking pretty good. Drop a comment if you love the webcam. Let me know. I'll get a positive review. But loving it so far. So, but I'm here. But enough about me. Enough about me. So here we've got Aleida, who is manages our whole recruiting process for PowerISA. She is here to talk about that whole journey, right? The journey. Because here in PowerISA, we have two scenarios, two main people we focus on. We have what we call our external client, which is the real estate agent, the loan officer, the investor. There's a scenario, there's a whole journey of them working with us. And then we have another client we focus on. We call them on our internal client, because these are the candidates. We look at them as clients as well. And Aleida is the person that manages that experience for not the only person, but she's the initial person that all of them reach out to and manages that whole process for us, the ISA recruitment process. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Aleida, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how does it all begin? Walk us through kind of step by step how the ISA recruiting process works nowadays.
I would say since the beginning, we start off by making these ads, making them go viral on Facebook, Instagram that we're using now as well for recruiting. So it all starts there, creating that content, letting them know that we're actually searching, we're hiring, and what we're needing. Basically, that native English that we all look for, people who have experience already, that is also very important. Now, once they click on that link, they go over to my WhatsApp, right? That's where communication starts. That's where I start filtering them because from those ads, I receive at least 130, 120 messages per day of the results
Wow.
of those ads. So it's very good
Individual people. So 120,
individually
130 individuals reaching out to you,
on a daily
wanting to know
basis.
more information and wanting to start the process, all that fun stuff.
Yes, basically that's the number of average I have. Not spending as much, I would say, on ads, so I think it's very good as well. It's a decent number. And once they start jumping in there, I try to get to meet them, what they have, what kind of experience they have, what background they have. The level of English is also qualified there. So if they have probably a level of English that's not native or somewhat native, then we let them go right there, right? Because we know that they're not going to get hired or it's a lot harder to place them down the line. So the
And that's
process
the
would
first
end
thing
there.
you can notice with someone, right?
Hmm.
That's the first thing we don't even get into the other things if
No.
their level of English is not like business level,
Mhm.
native level or close to native level. We don't even bother with anything else because that's the first thing you can evaluate pretty easily, right?
Yeah, that's the easiest, and that's why we also ask for the recording right off the bat, basically. A few questions like what's your name, your age, where do you live? And then from there forward, if they respond, then I ask for that recording. If it doesn't meet standards, then we cut them from the process from there and that, and just not waste anybody's time, basically. So that process is pretty quick for the people who don't qualify. For the people who do, we still have a few more questions, right? Like what type of a computer you have, what type of internet speed do you have? Does it qualify? Does it meet also the expectations? Because you might think this is not as important, but it actually really is. If somebody's equipment is not meeting standards, they're not going to work the way you want them to at the end of the day. So we do have to filter that as well. And there's been people who
Yeah,
have to let go because they
you
don't meet
bring
standards.
you bring up a really good point because you're right, right? Because even if someone has the best accent ever, best experience ever, if they're having internet issues, they're not going to be able to connect to a dialer. They're not going to, or it's going to be disconnecting from the
Hmm.
dialer constantly. They're not going to be able to connect on a web call like this. They're going to have issues with that. It might work at times, it might not work at others. So yeah, it sounds like a minor issue, but it's without that you won't be successful. Like a stable, broadband called broadband internet connection, you're just not going to be able to do the job, and that's a big thing. Some people learn it the hard way. I think when you
Hmm.
if you're going through this process the first few times, people might connect fine when you're talking to them that one time, but throughout the process, you're going to realize that's a deal breaker if they don't
It
have a
is.
stable internet connection and they don't have alternatives. That's really the biggest issue because they can get if they have one internet connection, they can bump up the speed. That's possible for some people, not everyone, or change providers. not everywhere. We're talking about Mexico, other parts of Latin America. They might be in a small town where there aren't
Yeah,
multiple
that's the
internet
only option they have.
providers. That's the only option they have, or they might be slightly outside of town, and in that area, there's only one. Like in that part of town, there's only one provider, and they're on it, and it's just not meeting the it's not at the bar, right? So yeah, really, really important little piece there. That it shouldn't be overlooked. It's huge.
No, it shouldn't be overlooked. At the end of the day, we're trying to avoid any misunderstandings maybe down the line, right? Where they're trying to say, oh, it's because I have great internet, but it's just not meeting standards when you're performing on it. Dialer's not good, it's lagging, computer might be lagging as well because it's not like an up-to-date computer, which also affects a lot on the work. Basically, with the automatic dialers, you could tell the difference when you have a good computer, a good quality of computer, and when you don't. So obviously, to save time for everybody, for the client side, it's very important that the ISA is ready to work and get to it, and also for the ISAs, right? It's frustrating to have a situation where you're not able to work properly, and then sometimes it could affect your work as well. So filtering that out is super, super important of the process. And once they have that and everything is good to go, they have the RAM that we're looking for, the internet speed that we're looking for, then I schedule them over to the interviews with me. So it's actually like a virtual interview with me. We have, cameras on, being very interactive, asking questions about your name. Again, you're getting to know us, breaking that ice at the end of the day, trying to know what type of personality they have. Um, I think this is also very important because it's kind of, where you're trying to get two people to meet. If their personalities make a match, then they're going to work together just fine. But if they don't, like, keep looking. It's sometimes a tricky game there.
It's a
The majority,
matchmaking. It's a little bit of like a
yeah,
matchmaking process, right? Like, hey,
yeah,
you know what? I mean, I
kind of
bet
like a
you
dating
guys
app.
should meet. You guys should be like a dating app. Like,
Yeah,
it's like speed dating. I mean, relatively fast, right? Hey, you guys should meet together. I think you guys will be compatible. It's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of that. I'm not gonna lie. There's
it
an
is.
element of that to it because you can have the best skill set ever, but if you guys don't click, there's no.
Not gonna
Well, I don't know
happen.
if, lack of a better word, like chemistry or good interaction, good vibes, whatever you want to call it. They're not going to get selected. It's not going to work out.
No, definitely. It's not going to work out. And that's something I always like to try and tell the candidates right on our side, our internal clients, is that, be yourself. At the end of the day, this is very important because we don't like, at the end of the day, maybe, putting out a persona. And then when you finally get to meet that person, it's like, hey, nothing of what I've met during these interviews. Like, what's going on? Where did you leave that person I've
Not
met?
real. It's not real.
Be yourself. I always like to tell them that I keep always everything professional on both ends. I think it's super, super important. But yeah, basically the interviews with me, it's pretty quick. I explain the whole process and how it works. And from there forward, if they submit the video, basically what the agents are seeing at the end of the day, the qualified candidate that went through all the filters. Once you see that, then we're good to go. I pass them over to our customer service team, and the girls are great at doing what they do. They perfectly match the ISAs with the clients, and they ended up getting hired. But keep in mind that we went with 120 candidates that came in on Monday, and probably on Friday, we're ending up with 10, 15 candidates that ended up going through the whole process and were actually qualified and they're
Got it.
good to go and they have the skill sets to work. So that funnel does get smaller and smaller at the end. And to be honest, I don't, that's not something that I mind because I'd rather have great candidates at the end of the week rather than having a bunch, but they're not meeting the agent's expectations. That for me is it's even better.
Yeah, 100%. You're right. 90%, rejection rate. I don't want to say rejection. It's really that they're not compatible, right? And unqualified, not compatible. It's not, I don't like the word rejection,
Mhm.
but it's not a good fit for them. They're not going to be successful, right? 90% of people that apply, they're bilingual. In fact, here's a funny story. In the early days of PowerISA, when I would do a lot of this process myself, I would have, and we had a
Mhm.
physical call center in the very early days, a physical call center. We'd bring people in, and I had like English teachers come and apply for jobs. It was a good opportunity. We paid really well for the area that we were in, and it was very innovative. We hadn't done like call centers at a high level here in this area. So I get a lot of candidates, right? And we would advertise back then. It was like the radio, not joking, radio, newspapers, right? And this is before I realized social media was a way to get it, because with the radio and newspapers, I'll be honest with you, we didn't get the target audience, but we got their moms and their cousins and their aunts and uncles and their granddad, grandparents and stuff, right? Or the neighbor would go, hey, you're the English speaking guy here in the block. You should apply for this job. Right? We get a lot of those
Yeah.
people, which is funny. But that was when we did it, and we got folks that were English teachers, and they'd come and they'd say, and they had really good English. They would have fluent English, like really high level English, but with a accent of someone that learned as an adult, right? It would have an accent like anyone would have an accent if you learn the language after 15, 20 years old, right? That's how that.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to tell them, I'd have to give them the bad news. You know what? You're great, right? And you're very good at English. You've studied it for a very long time. They spoke very eloquently. They spoke very effectively. But I go, there's only one issue. You don't sound like a U.S. person, right? And that is all the difference in the world. That's what our clients want. That's ultimately what we need to deliver day in and day out. So I had to kind of give them the bad news. And I had one of them, I remember one specifically that said, no, you're making a mistake. Because look at all my certifications. I mean, I'm like, look, you're wrong. I am really good at English. I mean, you are really good at English, the language, right? But we're looking for something different. And then I came up with a script that I would give them. You know what? You sound great and everything, but we're looking for something a little bit different, right? So, sorry. And then, and as the call center grew, that conversation got shorter and shorter. Like, you know what? Yeah, we're not just not a good fit. Bye. And I have to, kind of rush it because I didn't have a lot of time to do the screening. But that's how it would go. That's how it would go. You had to tell them, you had to give them that news. You know what? This isn't a good fit for you. We're looking for something a little bit different. And here in Mexico and other parts, there's different jobs for people with different levels of English, right? There's sales is the top of the top. That's what we do. Appointment setting, prospecting. You have to have the best English out there. Then there's the customer support. There's tech sales, and we recruit from those industries. But we recruit the top, like you just demonstrated, the top 10% of those industries qualify for this kind of an opportunity. Other folks don't, right? Just because they were in customer support, which quite frankly is also a sales role most of the time, right? They got
Most
to
of the time.
upsell, they get bonus retention and, upselling and people downselling. They got all these, sales metrics, quite frankly, but they're in customer support. Just because you're in customer support doesn't discard you from being in sales. I don't think so, right? In reality, it
No,
doesn't.
it doesn't. Sometimes they do more of internal sales, while they're doing that customer support service for the client. But like you said, not everybody has that sales native English or somewhat native to what we're looking for and what we're needing for these positions. So definitely I understand, where the backlash comes where, hey, you know what, you're making a mistake here. I have very good English. Yeah, we do have good English. You do have that skill, but it's not to what we're looking for, so it's very different, and sometimes it is kind of hard to give that feedback, and that's something I don't enjoy doing. I'm a very soft-hearted person, so for me saying, you know what, sorry, just gets to me.
Yeah, it happens. It's part of the job. Something we kind of have to tell folks and help them find something that's a better fit for them, right? It does, like you said, it does no one any good to get them in there in an interview and just get rejected and rejected and rejected every single time, right? I
Yeah,
mean, they're
just
they're
give
going to
them
give up
false
on the
expectations.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. So going from that, initial, process, you go through like the English level screening, and then the technical requirements screening, and then you have an in-person interview with them. When you're having the in-person interview with them, what is it you want to find? What is it you are looking for? Because I think that one's very important, right? Because
It
that's
is.
like the one screening they're going to have when they're talking to a person, and they're gonna get more of a shot. They're gonna get the opportunity to really, make an impression. What are you looking for when you're talking to them for the first time?
When I look at the candidates come in, I always like to be a little bit 5 minutes earlier than them, right? And I like to see if they're one on time because that one's super, super important.
Yeah,
That's obviously the first red flag. If they're like 10 minutes late, 17 minutes late, that for me is something that probably is not going to work out down the line because, they're going to have other interviews with clients. And if they're being late
they're
with
not
my
gonna make it.
interview, they're not going to make it with the client. That for me is the super important one. The second, like I said, is the more they evolve during the interview, how they're presenting themselves in the interview is also very important. Sometimes they come in with their cameras off, probably telling me that this is probably like a more, shy person, probably not more out there. Sometimes I have to request for them to turn them on. If they do turn them on, then they're still a little bit shy. They don't ask much questions, Which, to be honest, it does affect once you're having interviews with clients. For me, if you're not a self-motivated person to ask questions, it's just going to keep you in the process longer. So that is a recommendation I let them know, like, ask questions, be motivated on that end. The other thing I look at the interview is again the English because sometimes it could sound different when you're in the interview with them and when they send you the recording. When they're sending you the recording, they could probably, practice it for some time, but when they're in the interview with you, it hits a lot different because you have to talk to them fluently. And if they're not having time to think of what they're going to say, that's where the mistakes come out. And at the end of the day, that's what I look for the most. How fluent they are during these live interviews with me, I would say.
Yeah, they don't know what to expect, right? Or I would say another way, how good are they at thinking on their feet? Like in a high pressure situation, because this is a high pressure situation, it's a job interview, and they don't know what question is coming, right? They don't have any time to prepare. It's close to being on the phone with clients. Like, when you're making calls and you're making prospecting calls, making different kinds of calls, it's a really similar situation. You don't know what's going to happen at any given time. You generally know how it's supposed to go. You know the scenario. You know how to start. You know those things. But question to question, person to person, you actually don't know what's going to happen. Immediately next. And I think the interview, if it's not a perfect way to judge that, but it is a pretty good one. How good are they at thinking on their feet? How good are they at performing in kind of a high pressure situation?
Yeah, definitely. You have to ask a lot of questions. Sorry about that. My toddler's in here. But we have to go more into deep of getting to know them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And one of the things, I try to tell folks, because I'd love to get your take on this because I think at some level the interview is really good at some things, right? When you're interviewing, whether that's the filter that you're doing or the filter that our clients eventually do, the interview is really good at a few things, which is their language skills, what you evaluate, right? Their fluency, right? Their verbal skills, verbal ability. The interview is really good at that. Like, how good are you when you're talking to someone? What do they sound like? What do they seem like? Right? It's really, really good at determining that. What the interview is unfortunately not great at, because there's some things it's not great at. You have to really understand the process and why we do it the way we do it. You have to understand that fact. I feel we have to educate people on that. The thing the interview is not great at is someone's values, someone's
Exactly.
grit, someone's I guess their willingness to do a good job, right? I call it their values. Are you going to show up on time? Are you going to do what you're going to do, what you said you were going to do? Do you have the tenacity, the grit to do this work? Because I don't care if it's a cold calling campaign, calling FISBOs all day, or if it's an inbound Zillow, Facebook, Google campaign, you're going to face rejection. The only
Mhm.
difference is 99% of the time or like 89% of the time. That's the only difference, really, the only difference between an inbound call versus an outbound cold call prospect kind of campaign. It's really the only difference in reality. 89 or 99, like which one do you prefer? It's still a lot of rejection, like a lot of rejection, and that's very challenging for people to take. I remember this is a funny story. I had someone, we were training a group of recruits in our physical call center, and one of them just stood out. She was really, really smart, really, really good, just a great attitude, great teammate. But that was the first, we had like classroom training first, the first 3 days. This is the old way we used to do it. We don't do that anymore. But we had classroom training. That was one of the sessions was with me, and she was just phenomenal, great at role playing, great at everything. And then we got her on the phone, and it was shell shock. It was like, within
They
about a
got
few
to the real
days,
stuff.
she's like, you know what? I don't think I can do this. This is just anxiety would kick in, very stressed. We ended up hiring her to be our like administrative assistant, like an admin in our company because she was just really good, smart person, great, fast learner, really interested in the technology and the industry. He just couldn't do calls. That was painfully obvious within about 3 or 4 days. And she was also very self-aware, a very self-aware person who said, you know what? Yeah, this is not for me. Like, this is not, I'm just, they were losing sleep.
Yeah.
They were just not happy to be at work. Like, this is just really hard. It's really hard, right? It's very challenging. So that there's an element of this job that you have to do it to find out. You have to do it to find out. That's why we look for people with experience, especially cold callers. We're
Yes,
always looking. Aleida, have crafted campaigns and strategies to find some of these more experienced cold callers because that's one of the number one things you want. You don't want our agents to deal with call reluctance. Call
right.
reluctance. We want to save you the pain, the challenge, the frustration of having a great candidate. It's amazing. You love them. They're great. They're persuasive. They're great one on one in a controlled environment. You get them on the call on the phone and they kind of fall apart. You
It's
don't
a
want
different
that. That's
ballgame.
called
Mhm.
reluctance. Yeah, completely different, right? So that I mean that I think that I'll never get tired of telling people that, right? You're never going to get the full story just from the interview or the videos.
No.
Tell people we ask people actually to record a video. So, and what step of the process does a video happen? Because some of our clients they'll interact with that video, some don't. But at what point do we request that video, and what is that about? Tell people about that.
The video is basically requested after you've had the interview with me. Once we're done with that, once
Got
you
it.
had all the details. So that interview is basically just a quick presentation for the clients to see basically what type of experience they have on their previous jobs. And it's kind of short. I would say it's like 2 minutes long to 3 minutes. That's the average of what the ISAs turn in. And it's very hard to actually get to know a person fully by one interview, just like you're saying. I totally agree with that, Gus. And in one part of the recruitment, if you don't, if we recall, a few months ago, we were doing the psychometric test, which was the DISC test, kind of, similar. And surprisingly, we had very good results from very good ISAs. And they would tell us, this person has qualities and qualities for this. But at the end of the day, when you would put them to work, those people would end up being not a good fit. So it's funny that you were actually saying that, right? Not everything is what it seems. So sometimes it's just depending on
Yeah.
what type of person they are.
And some folks, and some of our clients too. I'm not gonna lie, some of our really successful clients, they love the personality assessments, right? So I think there's
Hmm.
a place for that, but it is way less reliable than people would like to think, than would like to
It is.
admit. It's way
It is.
less reliable to the point where we think it's noise. We think it's actually as a company, we've realized it kind of gets in the way of
It
judging
does.
someone's skills and their performance. It can lead you astray. It's one of those things that can lead you astray and make you make a bad decision because unfortunately, and the assessments, if you actually read what they're about and how they work, the assessments even tell you, like DISC, hey, this should be 25% of your decision. This should be 30% of your
It
decision.
shouldn't be
The
your full
problem
decision
is,
at all.
yeah, the problem is people treat it like it's 90% of their decision. They will reject people because this profile isn't what they want to see. And I go, well, hold on, right? There's four elements of their personality. How are you judging each one of those four? Because we have seen successful ISAs that have strengths in some of these, right? So why don't you put
Yeah,
this to the test? And people unfortunately sometimes don't see it that way. That's why we say, you know what? If people request it, we'll definitely do it. We'll provide it. We want to make sure they know how to use it too, right? But
definitely. Yeah.
we'll provide it upon request. But we don't rely on a personality assessment to judge whether someone is a great caller. And I think, but you know what? I'm willing to admit that might be unique to this role because I think personality assessments can help you with a lot of other roles. I think this role is so challenging, so hard to recruit for, and so hard to retain
Oh, yeah.
that's why I think there's an exception to it. Because I think in general, personality assessments are generally a good idea. I think you should do them as part of a recruiting process. But we're being 100% honest and transparent with people saying we don't rely on them to make our
I
hiring
wouldn't.
decisions.
I definitely wouldn't because, like you're saying, it does put a barrier to, trying to get the person basically how they really are, trying to get to know more of what skills they actually do have, and don't rely on the results that this test gave you at the end of the day. Definitely don't, meet the person actually, try to get to know them, see what kind of skills they have. Basically, how they're capable on the phone is obviously the most important, but I don't recommend the DIS test, as 100% choice maker. Definitely not at all. I would, don't rely on that. Rely on something else, on their skills and how they're on the phone. If they're good on it, that's what I recommend. Um, I think it's very hard to get to know somebody with one or two interviews. It takes time,
That's
obviously,
true.
but yeah, it takes time to be honest. So we can't decide probably like a week in, 2 weeks in. So it's a, winning game sometimes. So it does depend a lot of on the candidates that come in, definitely. Something I enjoy is obviously meeting every type of person out there. That is what I enjoy about the recruitment process. You get to meet a lot of people, not just from Mexico. Like I've had people come in from Canada, from Egypt. Not sure how people come in from Egypt, but they have come into our recruitment process. So it's they come on from different places. From my experience, I would say, once you're getting these videos and you're seeing what these videos have to offer, look more into just the person that you're seeing on that screen, right? Try to get to meet them. Don't rely only on that video, and schedule those interviews with them and see how it works. And if that click happens once you guys are in those video calls, that's what I would see on those videos. I enjoy also when candidates do these videos for us because you kind of get to see a sneak peek of what they have to offer and who
Yeah.
they are, but again, it's not fully who they are and what they have to offer
Yeah,
for this.
it's a it's close. It's close. It might help you decide. I think we use them to decide whether you're going to interview someone, to give them like the full
Definitely.
interview. I would never make a hire decision
No,
just based off a video. It's too easy to game that system. I think it's a little bit too easy to do that. I would want to talk to someone in a real interaction, right? So changing gears a little bit, I want to talk about what I feel is kind of like a little bit of our secret sauce. Like part of the things that makes us really, really successful is that we don't just rely on unmet candidates, right? People that we generate from ads, from advertising in the big Facebook groups. We don't just rely on that because that can be, there's a lot of work going in there to vet people, to make sure that they are who they say they are, that they've got the skills they say they do. There's a lot of, we have to take the approach that, you know what, we don't really believe you. Let's see for ourselves. Let's find out, right? That you have to have that approach. But we have another source of candidates that actually tend to be, if it's 90% we reject from the ads and from the big groups, the other one is probably 90% we accept from this other, a lead source. Sorry, not lead source, candidate. Well, lead source, candidate source. Can you
yeah,
tell us more about that, and how do we maximize that? Tell us about that super secret. Well, not a secret, right? But that super special a lead source that I feel is like it's our competitive advantage at this point, right? It is our unfair share of the marketplace because we have access to these kinds of candidates.
definitely. The other secret that we have basically is referrals. You know, those are the best. And to be honest, 10 out of those referrals that come in, at least 8 or 9 pass. Um, Referrals are very good to work with, obviously, because the person that is already on the other side, right, of the recruitment team, they're already working with an agent. They start referring until they are hired. So this is basically a win game because they know what we're looking for, they know what we're needing, and they know what other clients need. So from this being said, they send me good people. They say, "Hey, Alida, I have this good person. He's willing to work. He's interested in the dynamic." And I reach out to them like, "Hey, you know what? Your friend told me you're interested. Let's handle an interview. Let's go ahead and get started." And typically those persons are already ready and set to go because the referral is telling them, the experience that they're having and they're happy with the experience. So for me, it's a lot easier to engage with them and bring them over to our team. It's a lot faster. And it's something I enjoy because I know that the person is already qualified with the English. That's number one. And with the computer and the internet speed. And those referrals, to be honest, 10 out of 10 have experience in the call center industry. Mostly they already have experience in the outbound calls, so it's an easy game. Like I said, the filtering game changes a lot different. So I could probably go in with them without even doing the interview. That's how good referrals start. And obviously, we give them the interview because we would like to get to know them as well, their persona, what they have to offer. Still do the same process, but it's still easier and it's a lot more enjoyable and active. And we have, those referrals ready for you guys right away. That for me, referrals is a 10 out of 10. There's no losing game from there.
Yeah, they're the best. And one of the advantages that we have is that we've worked with so many people. I think at this point, it's got to be we have to have placed and or directly worked with and hired probably over 1,000 ISAs at
Yeah.
this point, right? At least 1,000 people in this role. So we have a network. We have a alumni. Let's call it that. We have alumni. We have people that know who we are. We're starting to become more of a known brand, in this industry, in Mexico, and people. And I always think that referrals are good for, I think, two main reasons. One, you just mentioned it. The person referring them has kind of done the work for you a little bit, right? They're like, hey, this is
Yeah.
the person, the kind of person they want. I'm killing it in this job. I want my buddy, my friend, might be a friend from the block, from their previous job. It might be someone they met when they were online gaming. I've seen that too, like someone they
Yeah.
interact
A
with.
lot.
Oh man, you'd be great. You'd be great at this job, because they play, I don't know, Call of Duty or Halo or I don't know, those might be really dated references, by the way. But, you're online, playing an online game, and you're interacting. People know, right? We tend to congregate. People don't know this, but people that speak English in Mexico, like in Mexico, living here, we behave and sound different than other people, right? It's a little bit
Yeah,
different.
we stand out.
We go and see the subtitled movies at the movie theater, right? You don't want to see the dubbed. You try to avoid the dubbed, little things like that, small things like that. You tend to find other people through interaction, or they'll just hear you talking on the phone with someone. They go, "That person's speaking English. Tell me more about that. Why is that? Right? You sound like a native English speaker. What's up with that?" So the people tend to know other people that they are have that same skill set, or they found them at another call center, another project they were on. They got to meet each other, like each other, and they recommend them. So that one advantage is huge, that they've done the recruiting for you. Number one. Number two is the thing that I love is that it speaks well of the company, right? I think it speaks well because the only way you'd recommend a terrible place to work is if you don't like someone, right? You're like,
Definitely.
oh, this place is terrible. Let me tell my worst enemy to come work here. That doesn't really
That's
happen,
not gonna
right?
happen.
It's not a real thing because that person's not going to respond to your messages ever again, right? And if that ends up being the case. So people don't do that. People recommend a place to work because they enjoy it, they like it, they feel the process is well managed. They feel the companies will run, right? People are pros, they're professionals at what they do, because we've heard every nightmare story in the book when it comes to call centers, like here in Mexico, right? Like
Yes,
the
we have
recruiting process is terrible. They're very poorly run. There's corruption. There's
management in
conflict.
general.
Yeah, there's a lot of toxicity in the environment. There's a lot of really can be some really bad behavior going on in some of these companies. Like any company, any industry has bad actors. Any industry has. I don't know why, but the call center industry tends to have more. Maybe I think maybe. And so there's all these things that can happen when someone gives you that vote of confidence. I love that. For me, I think that's doubly good, right? Because someone they trust, they know and like, is vouching for us. It's not just that they're doing work for us by recruiting someone. They're vouching for the company, so that person is much more likely to accept a role with
Oh
a
yeah.
company like ours, right? Because they're going to bring someone. It's going to be a very experienced candidate. It's going to be a go-getter, a doer, and someone that has that language skill, even if they've never done real estate before, which most of our candidates haven't.
Yeah.
Even if they haven't done real estate before, they are a call center experienced candidate, and they're just going to do great, right? So I love that lead source. I consider it one of our competitive advantages. We have such a large network now that
Yeah.
we get a lot of those. And another thing you didn't mention, I think is important. There's an economic incentive here.
It is.
They're incentivized to send us good people, because if that person gets hired and makes it through the process, right, and makes it through training, and the agent loves them, they get a bonus on that, right? It's a
It's
win-win.
motivation. So there's
Yeah.
referrals constantly coming in. So that referral is actually going to refer another person because they live the enjoy, they like the experience, so they're going to refer their friend, like you said, their family, their aunt, their uncle, and then that referral comes in, and it's just like a little chain that keeps building and building.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it builds back to our Facebook pages, to our Instagram, where they're constantly like commenting, like, "Hey guys, I love this place to work with." And, it's not putting flowers on our table because we're the company, right? These are the ISAs who are happy with their work and they're telling others like it's a good place to work. Obviously, there's a lot of other call centers out there and people are a spectacle to join. And they give them that little push, it's a real job. It's real what they offer, and give it a chance, go for it. They even put out like their vouchers of how much they're making a week, and it's just like, okay, don't go into that much, but tell them it's a good job.
They're pay, you know what? I've seen that actually. I've seen that
Yeah,
people that put like their deposit or their pay stub or whatever. I mean, they'll like, because people don't
their
believe it.
information.
Like,
Yeah.
like I don't think that's true. I'm working on a campaign and I'm making a couple $100 in salary plus bonuses. This is what I made this week, right? Like
Yeah.
some big fat bonuses, and like, oh wow, people are like very
It's
impressed by
real.
that, right? So
Yeah.
they become advocates for PowerISA. I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome, right? And if they're good at their job and they attract other people that are also like type A, really good at what they do, that's awesome. Like
Yes.
that's a like a virtuous cycle. We attract talented people that then attract talented people, and then I think everybody wins. I'm trying to make it a win-win, right?
Definitely. It's a win game for both of us. So it's
Love
something
it,
that's
love it.
fair.
All right. So, I want to be mindful of the time here. Aleida, thank you so much for jumping in today again, being here, a recurring guest now here on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and helping educate, our clients, people here in the audience on how this whole recruiting process works. So I want to thank you so much. and I will see you here on the next one. Okay.
Bye bye. Thank you for having me.
Right. Bye, everybody.